We are in the early but getting better stages of hypersonic missiles. China's ahead of us on that. It's because this is their focus. It is a communist military regime. Well, we're busy redistributing wealth, changing vehicles from combustion engine to electric. While we're wasting time, wasting trillions of dollars doing things like that, our enemies are building. The crew came across something that was very interesting to me. Communist China and the U.S. Why are both countries so interested in Taiwan? And we have to turn to the Germans, to a German press outlet, DW News, from a few months back, which kind of lays out issues related to Taiwan. And then I want to add to it, because this is coming to a head. The Chinese Navy is now bigger than ours. We don't have a big enough presence in the South China Sea. I'm deeply concerned about this. So is Japan, so is Australia, so is New Zealand, so is Vietnam, so are the Philippines. China is now claiming islands off of Japan. It's been doing that. It's claiming islands off of the Philippines. It's claiming the territorial waters off of Vietnam. It's extremely aggressive in its imperialism. Australia is very, very concerned because it hasn't built up its military. They've had one now damn socialist buffoon after another. They had a pretty good guy in there originally, but a decade or so ago, but now they've kind of surrendered that. But they're very vulnerable. And so let's take a look. And then, of course, Taiwan, they just keep doing these military operations threatening Taiwan. Imagine living in Taiwan since the 1940s. It was the island of Formosa. You know what's interesting about the island of Formosa? It was never part of the mainland. That is, Formosa was never part of China, even ancient China. So he just claims it. Oh, that's ours. Let's take a look. Go.
Chinese soldiers preparing for battle. This is what Beijing wants to show the world. With each military drill, China is drawing ever closer circles around Taiwan. China has a clear goal: to gain control over the island.
China will surely be reunified.
But why are these two superpowers so fixated on Taiwan? What's in it for China and the U.S.? It's Taiwan's location that makes it a geopolitical flashpoint. Taiwan has 23 million inhabitants, and its main island lies only 130 kilometers away from China's mainland. These tiny islands right off the coast are also under Taiwanese control. And Chinese military drills around the whole of Taiwan are getting bigger and more frequent. Let's go back to the map to understand why the U.S. and China can't quit Taiwan. In some ways, Taiwan's strategic importance is about 3 choke points around the island. To the west, there's the Taiwan Strait. It's a key trade route for both Beijing and Taiwan, and also for everybody else. Almost all the world's biggest container ships pass through here. To the north, the Miyako Strait. It runs between Taiwan and these Japanese islands. And in the south, the Bashi Strait. It runs between Taiwan and the Philippines. For China, these two straits on either side of Taiwan are key strategic gateways to the Pacific Ocean. The U.S. says it has no troops permanently stationed in Taiwan, but the island plays an important role in U.S. strategy. To understand why, let's look at the military bases in the region. Here are some of China's main naval bases close to its coast. And the U.S. has some of its key bases in South Korea, Japan, and the Philippines. If you connect the dots, you'll see the U.S. bases form a chain. Taiwan's location makes it essential to both sides as they try to gain the upper hand in the region. But the rivalry is also about money. Big money. Economically, the small island has an outsized importance for both China and the U.S., even though neither officially recognize Taiwan as a country. Both China and the U.S. have significant trade links with Taiwan, and much of that business comes from just one company. TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. It produces microchips. Taiwan makes 90% of the most advanced ones in the world. Both the U.S. and China are dependent on them, and so is everybody else. There's a good chance TSMC's semiconductors are in the device that you're using to watch this video right now. They're in new cars, fridges, and fighter jets. Everywhere. They're needed to develop new AI models. And U.S. leaders worry that losing Taiwan to China could permanently shift economic tides against them.
Very, very good. Now, the next question is, what can we do about this? And with each passing year, less and less. They talked in this film about how we're building up our military presence there. We're also strengthening our alliances there, but we're not building it up to a point that they're going to be able to rebuff China. China's going to surround them. They're going to choke them off economically. This is my prediction as the first leg of their strategy. Surround them, choke them off, and then warn the United States or anybody else. You fly planes over there, you drop them anything, we'll shoot you out of the sky. I mean, they're right next to China, you can see. And then we'll see what happens there. And then they will bombard it, they will attack it. They're planning and planning and planning on this. Now, the Taiwanese are tough people. They have a strong little military, but nothing compared to what's being built to attack them. I've been saying for a long time we should have been flooding them with weapons, missile systems and so forth, because the only way a little country like that can actually have an impact in a war against a big, massive country like China. I mean, they have 1.5 billion people versus 23 million there. So they can just keep throwing people at it and throwing people at it, like they did in the Korean War, did the Chinese, is for Taiwan to be able to hit their major cities. And you see, and to create chaos, and to create threats against their own government. And those are the kinds of missiles and missile systems they need. Not just defensive, not just to hit the other side militarily, which is important. But I can tell you Taiwan's a tiny island, so they're going to hit their population centers. And so Taiwan needs to be able to hit Communist China's population centers, of which there are many. And that, to me, would be the strategy that Taiwan would want to use, because if it's all or nothing, it's all or nothing. And again, the goal is these dictators, these communist leaders, or these genocidal leaders. You saw what happened to Assad, you saw what happened to Gaddafi and so forth. Maybe their time hasn't come, but it could be that the time has come. I don't know. You even saw what happened to the Soviet Union. So in my view, they need to get the kind of armaments now that will enable them to hit their major cities. Now here's the question. Donald Trump's been elected president of the United States, obviously. They didn't act while Biden was president, because they don't think they're in a position to do so. Why? Because their economy sucks right now, China's, but it'll be back. And so what happens if they do attack Taiwan when Donald Trump is president? I think they'll suffer economically in other ways too. And there will be some military reaction, but how much? So one of the things we must do in the new administration, whether people like it or not, whether there's waste or not, is build up the United States military. It has been undermined in the last 4 years. Our forces have been overstretched. We're not meeting our recruitment numbers because of the way they're doing the woke crap and the DEI junk and all the rest of it. We're not going to be able to rely on technology alone, because China has stolen a lot of our technology and is using a lot of our technology, even though we're still better than they are. Look at their numbers. And that's how they play this. They play it that we will have significant losses, meaning China, but we can handle them. We'll have more ships. They expect to have more tanks, more missiles, and so be it. And the other thing where they do have a big leg up on us, as do the Russians, but especially the Communist Chinese, is in outer space, is in satellite technology, in the sense of militarizing satellites. They have killer satellites. And their satellites can be programmed to slam into our satellites. They don't need to shoot anything. They just slam into them and destroy themselves and that satellite, or knock it off course, or do some damage to it. And then we're blind. Our entire GPS system relies on satellites. That's how they're thinking. That's why Donald Trump comes in and he says, we need a space force. We've got an air force, but we need a space force to deal with this. Brilliant. So he creates this space force to try and catch up. We are in the early but getting better stages of hypersonic missiles. China's ahead of us on that. It's because this is their focus. It is a communist military regime. Well, we're busy redistributing wealth, changing vehicles from combustion engine to electric. While we're wasting time, wasting trillions of dollars doing things like that, our enemies are building. And it doesn't help that on the hard left, of course, we have the isolationists, and then some who call themselves conservatives but aren't are isolationists too. I don't think there's enough of them. Donald Trump is not one of them, by the way. He's clearly not one of them. But that does exist. So there's a lot of things that are going to occur in the next few years that are going to have a truly monumental effect. Taiwan is one of them. How the Middle East is resolved is another one. What's going on in Europe with Ukraine and Russia, tied in with China and Iran and North Korea, that's going to have a major impact too. And so we'll be here to report on all of it.
For all this and much more, sign up for LevintTV.